Looks like we've got quite a nice crowd here. So the blood vein must be a popular topic. So the idea of this series is, as you know, the blood vein write-up was in the spring Nastawgan. And so the idea for the last couple of months is every time I see an article in the Nastawgan, I try to invite the authors of the article to actually do a presentation, so you kind of have a full picture of the article, but even better because it's got movies and more pictures, of course, and you can quiz the authors about trip details or things that are not really in the write-up. So it's kind of like trying to make it a full body Nastawgan in essence. So that's the idea. So we've done that for a few people now, and I'm planning every time the next quarter comes out. I usually see it about a week or two before it goes out for mail. So the idea is to carry on doing that. More so in the fall, winter, spring, like over the winter kind of thing. Not so much in the summer because people are tripping and whatever they're doing. But these series that we're doing, it kind of motivates people to, maybe go to the blood vein or whatever river next year. That's kind of the idea, to lay it all out. So it lines up. It's almost like a big trip report. Now the authors, you can always contact me through the WCA site, and then I can connect the dots between the members and the authors, if everybody agrees, of course. All right, we'll give people about 5 more minutes. Looks like we got a good crowd. We've got about 19 people right now, and that's a good size. We got somebody named iPhone. Very original. All right, so the Bloodvein River is a rugged Canadian heritage river over 300 kilometers from its headwaters in the northwest Ontario to its mouth on Lake Winnipeg in central Manitoba. Beginning at Artery Lake in the Woodland Caribou Provincial Park, slipping into Atkika Provincial Wilderness Park, gave us the opportunity to travel 230 kilometers through Canadian Shield topographical, entering 80 sets of rapids. We will share our logistics, costs, shuttles, and why you should paddle this river. Cindy and Ed have spent most summers paddling for pleasure and guiding on many rivers in Ontario, Quebec, and the Yukon, and as far away as Tennessee and North Carolina. Ed is a Paddling Canada Whitewater instructor for the Manitoba Canoe Camp and the Ottawa RA Canoe Camping Club. And winter months are spent alpine skiing wherever there is snow. And Cindy is a Canadian ski instructor working with adults, youth, and elementary school teaching downhill skiing. So welcome, Cindy and Ed.
Thank you.
That pretty much covers our presentation right there, Gary.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Any questions?
Okay, thanks for coming. Okay.
Yeah, we'll just fire up the presentation here.
Do the screen share. There we go.
This plaque was at the road where we took out on the underside of a bridge, and it was great to take a picture of because it commemorates the river from a couple of different perspectives. So what we thought would be a logical way to describe the river is to introduce ourselves, which Gary's done a great job of. Walk you through the thought process that we went through to do the blood vein, fast facts in terms of giving you some sort of context in terms of what the river and so on is about. Yeah, so then we'll put up a couple, 3 maps just to orient you in terms of what's what in the region. And then we'll go through a bit of a narrative on the river with a lot of photographs to give you a sense of what it looks like. Resources for more information, then we'll finish off with the Q&A. So that's how we'll tell our story.
Well,
So this is the crew. Cindy and I are on the left. The couple in the center we paddled with for many years, and the couple on the right we paddled with quite a bit as well. The gentleman with the sleeveless shirt, his wife got ill about a month before the trip and couldn't come, so we swapped his wife in for this gal. His name is Sonia, and I teach with her at the canoe club up here, and it's quite funny. There's a huge weight differential, and in spite of the fact that she wanted to paddle the stern, it didn't make a lot of sense. This is actually at the fly-in service. That's an otter, and I think that's about 5 o'clock in the morning, and when we're getting ready to go. So in terms of why we looked at the Bloodvein, living in Ontario, we didn't want to go crazy far away. And we've done a lot of the classics, the Petawawa, the Missinaibi, all that kind of stuff. And we wanted something that was still kind of beefy. And Cindy queued onto the Bloodvein. And it, by our standards anyways, it was a very straightforward shuttle. Admittedly, you've got to drive from Ontario to Bissett, Manitoba. But if you make that part of your tripping experience, it's not very painful. And the shuttle is really slick. You get to the fly-in service. It's about a 20-minute, half-hour flight to the put-in. And the day before you come out, you call them and they'll park your trucks at the bridge where you saw the plaque. So in that context, it's a very straightforward shuttle. There are different ways to get at it, but this was clearly the cleanest way. And when you look at the cost of the trip, it's generally a lot cheaper than some of the fly-ins up in the north and up in the territories. It was a class 2-3 river, I guess 1-3 river. That was great for us. It was some of the other folks on the trip were not that as experienced, so that was helpful. It was a 12 to 14 day trip. I think it was 225K. Even though it's fairly far north, it isn't in the lowlands. So we thought that'd be good for bugs. There were bugs, as you can imagine, but they weren't brutal. And it was easy to get information on. But it wasn't that busy. In fact, we only saw people the first day, and they weren't going down the Bloodvein. They were staying in the lake system upstream of it. And finally, it's a Canadian heritage river. You may have seen this slide before, but this is an inventory of the Canadian heritage rivers, both already designated and nominated. So, of course, Canadian Heritage River is going to be designated either because of its wonderful geography, history, or both. So right off the bat, you're going to have some pedigree. Bottom left, you can see the things they want to accomplish through selecting and sharing heritage rivers, advancing indigenous reconciliation, excellence in river management and conservation, and celebrating and stewarding some of these rivers. So I'm betting that most of the people on this call have done a number of them. We've done probably 5 or 6, and they've all been wonderful. It's kind of neat. So again, we'll get into the logistics a bit later. Well, actually, they're here, so I'll dial that now. So if you wanted the longest possible run, you could put in at Red Lake, which is about, if I remember, it's about 3 or 4 hours north of maybe Dryden on Highway 17, and Dryden is west of Thunder Bay. And you can go by car. The logistics are a bear. But if you start there, you've got about 8K portaging, which is largely unavoidable because that piece of water is not actually connected to the Bloodvein, so you're going over land. And I've also read that thanks to fires from a couple 3 years ago, you're doing some pickup sticks over trees and stuff. And nonetheless, for those who like long trips and a good workout, we start at Red Lake. Knox Lake is the headwaters, 40K to the west. And it's more of a lethargic river. It's wider there. So what we chose to do was put in an artery, as mentioned, is 225K. It's got a pretty big elevation drop, 104 meters over the distance. And that worked for us because there were 575 sets of rapids in the water. Generally, the river was narrow enough that you didn't have a ton of wind. Some days you did, but not a ton. And it was usually moving. Just about the parks, sorry, Sin.
Yeah, go ahead.
So woodland caribou is the Ontario one. It's got over 200K of maintained, 2,000 kilometers of maintained river trips or water trips. And it's about 4,500 square kilometers. And I hope I can pronounce this right. Is it Atakaki?
Sounds good.
Provincial Park was Manitoba's first wilderness park, coined in 1985, and it's got about 2,900 kilometers, and they're adjacent to each other. So it's a massive piece of parkland. And there's a caribou herd. We didn't see any, but there was about 350 woodland caribou. So that's another enticement for us. And actually, the picture on the left, that's one sign, just looking from different sides. So just framing what I talked about on a map, if you look at down the bottom right, you'll see both the town of Red Lake and Red Lake. And then it networks up to where the green starts, which is really, which is the Bloodvein River. You can see Knox Lake there. And the river travels north up to Artery Lake, where we landed, and then off to, I think it was what, 15K to the, before you hit Lake Winnipeg, where we took out?
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you look in the upper right, it just sort of frames it within a larger context of the two provinces. And I was surprised, but it's almost on the same latitude as the bottom of James Bay. So it's up there, it's north. All right.
So I can talk to this one. It's there are different options after reading about it and talking to different people about where to go in terms of getting into the river. There's a couple of outfitters. I'm not 100% sure whether both or one is still in existence in Red Lake. The issue I thought, or we thought, with going to Red Lake is they could fly you in, but they only had small planes, which I believe were beavers. So it would take multiple flights to go into whatever lake you wanted to go into. So that was a bit of an issue. Weight, of course, would have been a bigger issue. And then in terms of when you come out, either at the bridge, or let's say you go to Lake Winnipeg and take out there, then you've got to think about a shuttle. So how are you going to get your vehicles? And options were the outfitters could take your vehicle to your takeout point, but of course that's extremely costly. They could come and get you in a van, but it's a long ride back to Red Lake. So the our choice was to do our own driving. We thought we'd make it a trip. We took I think it was 4 days to get to visit Manitoba. Enjoyed some provincial parks, which we'll talk about. And I can't say enough about Blue Wave Aviation. They were so accommodating, so easy to deal with. And Tanya, who is the office manager, is always very, very responsive. And they have an otter, which you see in the background. So they could take 2 boats. And if we had nested one boat, they could have actually taken all 3 boats on the one flight. But what we did was we took 2 boats on one plane, and it was a 20-minute flight in. They dropped us off, and then they went back and got the other boat. And then we didn't have to fiddle around with all the rebuilding of the canoe. The other interesting thing, which we'll show you, is just right in Bissett, there was a community park that you could camp at. So of course we were in the day before our flight. And when we came out late afternoon. So we stayed overnight before we all started to head home. And then a big benefit was the Blue Wave Aviation actually shuttled our trucks. We took 2 trucks over to the Bloodvein Bridge, and we had made arrangements. I'll say it was 13 days, 14 days. And I knew we were going to be a day early, so I have an in-reach, and all we did was send a text message off to Tanya, and she had our trucks at the bridge. So that's a great way to put in and take out.
Big time. Yeah. So this is big picture. So you are here. I mean, I think the majority of the people on the call are in the Toronto, Ottawa vicinity. So I just thought I'd throw this on to give people a sense of where everything is. You can see Highway 17 going across the top of Superior. If you see the, if you look at the white box that Bissett is in, above it about 3/4 of an inch, that's where Red Lake is. But again, what we elected to do was drive just inside the border of Winnipeg and head north up to where the arrow is at Bissett. So that kind of gives you a sense of the driving. Again, I'm guessing that most people on the call have been up on Superior, but it's just wonderful country. It's just spectacular. And these are some of the places that we stopped at. So across the top is Pancake Bay, which is just outside of Sault Ste. Marie, I'm going to say by 50, 75 kilometers. Kakabeka Falls is a provincial park, I think. It's in Thunder Bay. Actually, talk about the West Hawk campground. It was kind of different.
Yeah, so then we went to White Shell Provincial Park in Manitoba. And because it was a new park we'd never stayed at, we thought that was a long day of driving. And the West Hawk, it's right in pretty well. As soon as you get into Manitoba, you get off up on a highway, and it's not very far, maybe 20 minutes, half an hour. But it was kind of a cool park where it was obvious back in the day, quite I'll say a resort, if you will. It had like pickleball courts and tennis courts, and not that we did any of that, but just a very popular park. And there were lots of people there, and kids camping, and it seemed like a very friendly place. So that was a good spot. And after 3 days of driving, you know how long it takes to get out of Ontario, from White Shell up to Bissett was maybe 3 hours. And we saw some cool sights on the way up, some great big huge dam that was, the water was just amazing there. But so overall, we made it like just a really nice leisurely trip up.
And Bissett's as an old gold mine, and they're mining the tailings now. This is the park in Bissett. It's free. There's probably room for 10 tents or so. It's not small, and the lake is nearby, and it's, like I said, a K or two away from the outfitter. So it's wonderful for staging. And you can park your vehicles at the air service until they shuttle up. So it's pretty slick.
Yeah, like two of us had pull trailers, travel trailers, and a guy had like a Westphalia van. And so they have a secure parking lot that you can leave your vehicle in. You give them your keys just in case, I guess, things have to move, or, well, no, the trailer wouldn't move, but everything's very secure. You just leave everything with them.
So this is our first campsite, first day, and again, there was 2 flights in. Normally they've got a dock on this body of water, but the water was high, and we'll tell you more about that in a bit. So the dock wasn't there, and they just cut the engines in the middle of the lake, and we paddled about 500 meters. So this is our setup. There's probably one more tent, but yeah.
And you could have had more. I mean, this was just how we set up, but it was big enough that you could have come. And that was the one thing I can say about the campsites, is they were plentiful and large enough for a bigger group. So one of the features of Artery Lake and the Bloodvein, as advertised, are pictographs. So we were in early on the first day, and it was a beautiful day. So we went off trying to explore the pictographs. And I'll be honest, they were difficult to find. They were very faint, so it's very, I don't even know if you can see it in the picture. But it was a really nice day to paddle around the lake itself. It's a good sized lake with a lot of different inlets, and we just desperately looked for the pictographs. And what we thought, maybe one of the theories was that we couldn't find the pictographs because the water was so high, and you know, potentially some of them were below the water line.
Yeah, and this was the only place we ran into people, and there was a parks maintenance guy there, and I was asking about the pictographs, and they'll protect them in terms of vandalism and so on, but they won't do anything to maintain their, for lack of a better word, their vigor. So they're just going to fade over time. And in prep for this call, I was reading a little bit of background on the river, and I always thought that pictographs were made of berries and, you know, some sort of animal oil. But according to what I read, there's a mineral called red ochre, I believe.
I think so.
And it's mixed in with sturgeon oil, and that's what they used. So, anyways, who knew? The second day was different than the first day. We went from great weather to not good weather at all. And that's when we found out that not everybody had good rainwear. We're kind of surprised by that. You guys, again, I'm sure the majority have been in Saucon weather, and it was cold enough that had it stayed like that for a while, we might have had issues around hypothermia, but we just assumed that everybody would have had the right kit.
Yeah, so the lesson learned, which we probably should know anyways, is you know, while we have a label on our checklist of personal gear and outerwear and so forth, we should really go through and make sure everybody has the proper gear, because as you can see, the little poncho that Sonia has, it really didn't do much good. And fortunately, the weather cleared and we had a great weather the rest of the trip. But had it been not so nice, we could have had an issue that we'd have to deal with.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're on the river.
So for those who remember the CRCA, the canoe these guys are in were sold at an auction when they sold their headquarters in Markville. That's a Discovery 169, and if you didn't know it before, you know now that they're not a very dry boat. And yeah, so this is one of the first rapids that we did on day three. And down on the bottom, Cindy's taken a photo from Hap Wilson's book, and this is what they call a marine railway, and it's a track, so you don't have to empty your boat. You can just carry it over if you don't want to run this rapid.
Yeah, and it was only about a kilometer from where we were camping. And so the day before, when it was nice, we went over and had a look at it and thought that the marine railway was pretty cool, which, you know, you could put your boat on and walk it over, which would be great in low water. But we chose to do the ledgy side of the rapid because there was enough water and it was a little bit fun to go over and kick off the trip.
We didn't see it, but others saw a cow and a calf up ahead in the water just about this time. So, Gary, it was kind of you that got us interested in the water levels. So based on that discussion, Cindy dug a bit deeper. So what you're seeing here are the historical water levels from 2019 out to 22. And you'll see you've got, in each data set, you've got July 26th to August 10th, because that was the period of time that we ran it. So that's how we wanted to compare it. The red lines refer to the discharge in terms of CMS. And the blue line refers to the water level of the river. So thanks to a little bit of guidance from Gary, we have confirmed that we did paddle it in high water. So if you look to July July, August 2019, it was running between 28 and 18 CMS. And then if you look out to July 21st, July 26th, Aug 10, and 2021, that's when the fire stopped us from going. It was even lower at 17 and 23 CMS respectively. But if you look at 2022, when we ran it, it was running at 123 to 102 CMS. So it was bigger when we ran it than the other years.
And the other thing I want to mention, just while we're talking about this, in 2021, that was when we had planned on going, and that's when they were having in Manitoba the massive fires. And again, Tanya from Blue Water Aviation the week before humbly called to say, like, nobody can fly in. In fact, they're flying people out off the river. And, but so they refunded our money just in case we couldn't go back the next year. So I thought that was very generous. And fortunately, we were able to go back the following year. But yeah, so the water levels, you can obviously were quite a drought that year with the fires.
The blue line is the depth. And of course, it's dwarfed because of the numbers on the CMS data. But if you look really closely, with the water level. So when we did it again, let's say that it was 30 meters,
30 and a half, yeah.
30 and a half, and back during the drought, it was down at 28. I mean, that's a difference of 6 feet. So that's a lot of height in the river. And you'll see the stain on the river rocks as we go through the presentation. So it even gets higher, like way higher in the spring. So it was a different experience for us. Hap Wilson had a group out a week or two before, and the outfitter was telling us he had problems with some of his clients. But to give you a sense of the difficulty of the river, he declares it as novice intermediate. Blackfeather gives it a 3 on a scale of 1 to 4. We didn't find it any different than that. But other in high water, like it's pushier. And a lot of the portages were right at the brink of the drops. So you could only have one canoe in. They'd have to get that thing out of the way, and the next one came in, they have to grab it and yank in. So a few things like that. And it's remote enough. You want a spot. You don't want to lose a canoe. And you want to have a good first aid kit if you got hurt.
This is one of the rapids. I forget the name of it, if there was one, but it's very typical of what the rapids are like on the Bloodvein. So let's say you've got about a 200-meter either portage or rapid to run, and you can find nice black V's. There usually are a couple of holes. But it's not super technical, but with the volume we had, you definitely had to make sure you had a good strong brace, because the curling waves or whatever can certainly knock you around. But this is very, very typical of what we encountered. Now, it was a big difference when you had anything greater than a 200-meter rapid portage, and we'll show you some of that as well. Anything?
It sounds weird, but it would have been great to have a spray cover, because a lot of these drops were it was straight through, but the waves were just 2 waves through and you'd be torpedoing. So we thought we were like hallucinating. We're definitely not in Florida, but there they were, pelicans. And I had no idea that they were up there, and we saw lots of them. Every day we'd see groups of 25, 30, 40. And when they lift off, their wings are thunderous. It was really quite cool.
And they always seem to be around a bend. So you're minding your own business, looking at the scenery, and you come around a bend, and there they are ahead. So it was pretty spectacular to see that. So this is we just talked about, the nice little C2 with a couple of holes and a nice big black tongue. Well, then you come to things like Goose Rapids. which is a series of 4 drops. And this is, I'm going to say typical as well, in terms of not necessarily always 4, but, more than 1 drop. So this one would start with a 5. And, once you get through the 5 or portage around the 5, then there was a C2. But again, the issue is you can't see what's around the corner. So obviously you've got to do some scouting. This was in the burn from last year, and it was a really rough portage, and you can see it was about 450 meters. And it was quite a high ground, like quite a steep up and a steep down at the very end as well. And of course, it was pick up sticks because the trees were down, and whether it was hop or whether it was the, now we're in the park of Atakaki, whether it was the Atakaki Rangers, but there was flag tape to follow. So that was pretty cool to be able to get through all of that. But you can imagine carrying your canoe plus all your gear, stepping over all of this, all of these trees. So what we did do was we carried all our gear across. And then we ran a couple of boats through the technical C1. And again, this is coming from Hap's book, where it's called the fish hook. And at this level, I'm going to say it was less technical than the way in which he describes it in his book, because we have a little more water. But there is a very funny story that goes with this. So one boat got through, one didn't. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I talked about the weight differential between the 2 paddlers, and when they went over the drop around the corner, it catapulted John, the 200 or 300 pound fella, out of the boat. And she didn't know he was out, and she was still barking at him. And he was like a couple hundred feet behind. And and as she's doing this, because of the lost weight in the back, the bow just torpedoed, and she was swimming as well. But it was pretty funny to watch. Yeah. So this guy is not a rabid poser by any stretch. But you can tell it.
Yeah, so again, in the book, there is a rapid called the X Rock, which is a class 5. So you're going to be doing a portage, and there is a campsite there as well if you wanted to stay. So you go through the C1 to get to the camp. There's a camp on the island. But because we didn't camp here, but because it was mentioned that there is a rock with an X, we had our lunch here, and then we took some time to find the X, and sure enough, there really is a vein of whatever it is on this rock marking an X. So it does some fun things, obviously, when you're on a canoe trip. So this is a nice class 2, round the bend, good campsite, play rapids there. And, what you can see in terms of the campsites is there's always this nice open bedrock. So if we were in a situation where there were a lot of bugs, at least you're out of the trees, and you can set up your kitchen and campfire and so forth on the rock and enjoy any breeze. And then, this was a nice little rapid. Again, there was a nice tongue. There were a couple of holes, rocks, eddies. Like you could just surf, you could ferry, you could eddy in, eddy out, do all the things that you want to do in terms of having a bit of fun. And we never, just to make a point here, we had leisurely days. Like we did not, the whole trip, we were a day ahead. We're probably on the river by 9-ish. Off the river, maybe 4. Sometimes it was earlier, maybe 2:33. And this happened to be one that was an early day because we wanted to take advantage of just playing around in the nice weather.
I talked about the stain from the high water mark. So again, if this was running inordinately high in July, August, imagine when it was up at this level. And again, this landscape is quite typical of what you see along the Bloodvein. And as you probably know, one of the reasons it's popular is it's a very, very pretty river, and it's still pretty in spite of the burns.
So this is a typical, I'm sure everybody's encountered this. There was a campsite that we said we were going to get to. And some of the campsites are up on bluffs at the rapids where it would be a bit of a walk steep walk down to get your water for cooking or filling up your gravity bag or whatever. And so we all decided we didn't like that. We would rather be on the campsites that are close to the water. So of course, this is the day where it's 6 o'clock, we can't find a campsite. Where is the one that we're supposed to be getting to now that we've decided not to camp on the bluff, and picked a spot? And we made it home. And, like everything, once you get your tent set up and your kitchen and you can go for a nice swim and so forth, it's a do-it-yourself campsite on this lake. And so we had fun. And now the water is like the river is a bit wider. So now we're encountering a little bit less of a river feeling, more of a lake feeling. And again, probably happens to everybody at least once. When we set off the next morning and we went around the point that you see in the distance, there was a beautiful campsite there.
So to me, this defines the beauty of the Bloodvein. There's a campsite, and if you looked downriver another whatever number of degrees, it's the same rapid, and it's the same open, easy, gentle rock down to it. It's just spectacular. But in terms of volume and complexity, some of these rapids had big holes and obviously huge waves. And I mean, most of them that we didn't run right off the bat would have been because we would have swamped. But even if we got over that, there were some must-make moves away from holes. They might take up a third of the river, and they were hungry. Yeah. So, but it's just beautiful. You sit there reading your book, bit of a fire going. It was really nice. These were long there, right? Longer.
Yeah, the daylight. We had lots of daylight. I'm sure it was well after 10 o'clock before there was any sort of dusk happening.
Same campsite,
Yep.
Just a different view of the water. So one of the things we do on a trip is everybody has to bring a surprise to break the monotony and just have some fun. So the tall couple, the guy in the blue shirt and the gal in the red coat, they made that game where you drop bean bags or whatever in the holes for points. And so they brought paint, and we had to paint our set of rocks to go into the holes. And of course, things eroded to face painting, which was very childish, and I thought it was bad. But there was huge winnings. He went to the liquor store and told them what he was doing. And one of the employees of the liquor store stole little bottles off the sample bottles off the main ones. And those were the big prizes. So yeah, it was really a fun day. So lining was very, very useful on this river. And the way the geography was, Cindy mentioned this to me when we were looking at these slides. It was clean. There were rocks along the edge. It wasn't like deep bush where your ropes got tangled up. And we did not all, but mostly one person lines. Sometimes, if you look at the upper right, for example, if I couldn't get past that rock outcropping, what I might do is have someone downstream with the other rope and then let go of mine when the boat pivoted. But lining really helped us. It saved a lot of carrying. Yeah, it was just we must have lined
Lots.
a lot.
We lined lots.
Yeah. And oh, sorry.
Again, just to show what pretty scenery there is. And it just seemed that all the nice campsites, there was something to do, something to play, a little C1. And it was just a lovely evening. And again, demonstrating how there's the bedrock that goes out into the river that you can set up camp on. You can put your tents further in, a little more secluded. But it was very, very pretty.
Lots of jack pine. I think some red pine, but might have been white pine. But seems to me that the predominant was jack pine. A lot of poplars. No hard. Oh, I was going to say there are no hardwoods, but you know what? There were oaks,
Yeah,
which puzzled us all.
Yeah. So far we've been in and out of a burn. So it just was kind of interesting as well, how there were pockets of burns and then there was nothing. And yeah, and just an example of the different wildlife. We saw a lot of wildlife, which is kind of cool. So the fish that John caught, that was the first day. I think it was his first cast. and he's quite a fisherman, so that was a real prize for him. He put it back, so catch and release. But I think we did have a couple of fish fries throughout the trip. So that was good. Saw a couple of little black bears. You know, one near our camp, which was fine because then we set up camp and he or she left. Lots of bald eagles, snow geese, yeah, and some swans I think we saw,
Yep.
and pelicans. Oh, moose, yeah. So it was cool.
Yeah, so this we tried to at least get one slide on the burns. It's a brand new burn because it was the year before. So you had some areas where not even weeds had come up, and it was still like walking in a fireplace. And if you touched a tree, you got black. Of course, it wasn't a nice thing, but it should be no reason not to do this river. Yeah, and it was sad to see. I mean, if you've been up in the territories, you'll see this like for miles. This one had patches. Oh, what was quite interesting, there was a noticeably less wildlife in the burns, including bugs. It wasn't as buggy. And no matter where we took water on the river, and of course we always filtered, it always tasted smoky. So yeah.
Yeah, and then again, you come out of the burn, and now we're heading towards probably the last 40K or so, and the scenery just becomes stunning. So now what happens is after that do-it-yourself campsite on a lake, the river did start to narrow, and it was so pretty to go along along as a river with the again the rock and the trees and so forth. A really nice little spot I had to mention was where the Leyland River comes in.
Yeah, really pretty.
Yeah, it was just a little wee waterfall sort of thing, and yeah, nice little lunch spot.
Swam a lot. Water was it was warm.
It
The
was
weather
warm.
it was good weather, really good weather.
All right, so this is our last campsite, Nami Rapids, and again, it starts off, well, in different water, I would suggest it starts off as a C3, but it probably was more of a 4 at the top, and then became technical. So there was no way you could run the top. Again, the volume was too high and so forth, but it had a wonderful, wonderful stretch of, I would say class 2 to class 1 that you could play in, the rest of the afternoon. And since we were only about 15K to our takeout, and the current is really, in fact, we got to Nami Rapids very quickly. We kind of thought we had, I think, I'm going to say maybe it was 26K we thought we were going from the previous campsite. And lo and behold, around the corner, there we are at Nami Rapids. So the current was really moving, but not a lot of difficulty. And then once again, it was just a beautiful, beautiful campsite. We've got your huge, huge bedrock by the water. You've got water to play in. Nice, lots of spaces for tents. And the next day, we know we don't have very far to go.
Yeah, another classic. I mean, it's so nice to do a piece of water like this, right? It's just great big black tongue, really, really pretty. And again, typical of the Bloodvein.
Yeah, so that's our grand finish because it's the last rapid before we're going to go. So we can show you one rapid that actually Ed and Sonia, they teach together. So they decided that the boats are all emptied. We portaged all our gear, so they were going to take a rest. All right, just a little example of we did get to run some rapids.
So here again, it's a takeout. And yeah, you think a lot about the First Nations that govern this land. It's the Bloodvein. First Nations. According to what I've read, they've been on this land for over 2,000 years. It was a secondary trade route through the Bloodvein to Lake Winnipeg and then north up to James Bay or Hudson's Bay. So we thought about that.
Yeah, and this was the Bloodvein village, which I said is about 10, 15K upriver. They had no road access until this road actually got built. And forgive me, I don't remember when it was built, but it is fairly recent. Sorry for the train.
Yeah, I think it actually said it on the bridge.
Did it?
Yeah, if you go
Oh.
back to your sign, I think I remember seeing a date there.
I'll go back there in a second.
Yeah. But the bridge is pretty new, so
Yeah, very new.
20
Very
years,
new.
15 years, something like that.
Yeah.
10, 15 years, I don't know.
So this is us getting organized when we got back to Bissett. There were no really dangerous situations paddling, but there was at the campground. One of the couples had promised to keep our beer cold in an electric fridge that they had, but a mouse got in their camper and chewed through the wire and it was warm. Well, let's face it, 16 days on a river, 50 sets of rapids, parched, not good. So we went to a campground. The guy didn't sell ice, but he called the owner of a store and she came back in and opened up for us. They're really, really nice people in Bissett. It was really funny.
It was worth a while because, you know, the chip bags flew off the shelf. The beer came out of the cooler. Ice was sold, so it was well worth their while. So overall, it was a wonderful trip, and everybody enjoyed it. And so we did 13 days, 12 nights. 75 sets of rapids, and I averaged everything out to say 16 kilometers a day. But some days it was 20. But it was never, any long days. And we had a couple of half-day layovers. This crew that, we canoe with don't necessarily do full days. They don't mind half days, but they like to keep moving. So it was a great trip.
Yes, it was.
So when I was the one that did a lot of the logistical planning and so forth and getting the information together. So we had topographical maps. We had certainly Hap Wilson's very, very detailed graphics of the rapids. I had actually copied and laminated and kept with us. Yeah. And it's a great book. There's other rivers in there, so it's a worthwhile book to have. Blue Water Aviation, of course, were good. A couple of our buddies from the club did the trip, I think 2 years ago. So they were a good resource we met with. I'm sure people are familiar with a couple of these websites that I've got noted here where you can get lots of details as well. And that's how we pulled everything together.
And Gary, as you mentioned, we are now a resource for you folks.
That's good.
We're happy to take emails and questions and so on.
Yeah, exactly. And I understand that there's a map library, and we actually have a couple of sets of the Bloodvein maps that we're, would like to make sure that it gets into the library.
Okay.
So thank you very much for watching, and we welcome questions.
So what we could do is stop sharing the screen, and then I could say we could start off with maybe the questions from the chat. And I'll just ask the people from the chat to ask their question, I guess. So we'll start at the top. Donna Kurt says, hello, I am from Winnipeg, Paddle, Canada. And she's done or led and participated in 6 trips on the Bloodvein. So Donna's in the audience, I guess. Dave Skinner said he was on the river with Hap Wilson the week before you guys.
Okay,
So,
yep.
Dave, where are you? If you could just.
I'm here.
There you go.
Hey, Dave.
Hi. Yeah, we initially were going to go down the Bloodvein in 2020, but because of COVID, we couldn't go. And then 2021, everything was on fire, so we couldn't go.
Yeah.
So we went last year, and we started on the 22nd and finished on the 6th. So we cleared some of the portages for you.
We know, and you left firewood. It was
Yeah.
wonderful.
If that, whoever was ahead of us was really,
Yeah.
really gracious.
Yeah, we
fire-
met two other groups on the river. They were both scout groups, and one was from Arizona and one was from California.
Oh, wow.
And they weren't letting them run any rapids. They made them portage everything. So it was kind of funny, but we camped at Chap Falls as well. And Hap's nephew and one of the people from our group ran that rapid 3 times and dumped every single time.
Yeah.
But they got the
Yeah.
canoes down below the rapids, so that was okay.
Wonderful.
And yeah, Hap's nephew, I don't remember which rapid we were at. It was farther up. Caught 26 pickerel in 2 hours.
Wow.
He just
Wow.
threw them all back. 'Cause we already had enough fish for breakfast.
Yeah.
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 The fishing up there is phenomenal.
It
Yes,
is.
it is.
And you know, the farther you go, the less people there are. The places just are not fished out.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did see the pictographs about 4 kilometers or 5 kilometers upriver from that railway.
Yep. Yep.
You had to go quite far up, and there were some fairly impressive pictographs up there.
Okay.
You just had to get far. You go up far, and then the river kind of narrows, and they're just on a cliff on the right hand side as you're going upriver.
Yeah, we didn't go that far.
Yeah. Well, Hat told his nephew, "You go find them. I got stuff to do. You go find this stuff for these people." And so we did.
Yeah.
The Blue Water Aviation, there was an interesting bit of trivia. That plane used to have a radial engine, but they upgraded it to a turbine, and because of that, it didn't weigh as much. So they had to extend the nose to get the turbine engine, so the weight distribution was correct. So you noticed, you look at that picture, that plane has quite a long nose on it, and that's why.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
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 Wow.
So
I didn't know that. Yeah.
but we were a bit unlucky, and at times we didn't really have any issues on the river, but as you know, not paddling so much. But Hap wouldn't let us run a lot of the rapids because he says this stuff is higher than I've ever seen it. He'd been down the river 6 times.
Yeah.
So stuff that we thought we were going to run, we didn't get to run. But he was being kind of conservative, but that's fine. We still managed to get one woman cracked 2 ribs on a portage, fell carrying something. I don't know what she was carrying, and everybody had some sort of injury, but it was, you know, the portages were pretty littered with crap when we went through. We cleaned some of it up, but there was still an awful lot of junk there.
Yeah, there
And we
was.
had a little trouble finding them at times.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you know, we paid Hap to guide us because, well, he's a friend of mine, but also you know, we'd never gone on a guided trip. I'm usually the guide, so you know, it was kind of a different experience having somebody guide us. And yeah, we met in Winnipeg and went up to Bissett the morning we were leaving, and you know, got flown in, and the cars were transferred just like yours and everything else. That was
Yeah.
great.
Nice.
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah, it was good.
That yeah, that was the first time I'd ever been on a canoe railway
Yeah.
going up at the beginning there, because we camped up above that and then
Yeah.
went up 3 or 4 more kilometers to find these pictographs.
My theory is the fisher boats go down and then they use the railroad to go back up the river.
Okay.
That's right. Yeah, the
You know,
motorized.
So
boats,
it's
the-
really for the motorboat crowd.
Yeah,
the
well, it
team
worked for
crowd.
us too. We just thought
Yeah.
it was neat.
Yeah.
Never
Yeah.
seen such
Yeah.
a thing.
It is neat.
But yeah, but we did basically the same trip you did. We pulled out at, in fact, we camped at the bridge where the cars
yeah.
were. There's just before the bridge on the right, there's a campsite.
Yeah.
And we camped there overnight because we were a day early.
Okay.
And we were out in, well, 11 days of paddling, and we have 1 rest day. Because one of our crew is allergic to yellow jackets and got stung.
Oh, gee, you had bad luck.
Yeah.
So she had probably half a bottle of Benadryl. She didn't want to take the EpiPens because when you use the EpiPens, you have to go to hospital apparently. So she took a chance and just had a whack of Benadryl, and she slept for 12 hours, but she was fine.
Wow, that's good.
That's good.
So
Anyway,
we have a question here from John O'Grady. John, you're in the audience somewhere. Why don't you pipe up? And your first question is, can you estimate what percentage of the rapids you were runnable?
That's it, Gary. Thanks.
There you go.
That's a good question. I'm gonna start while Ed's thinking by, we were making conservative calls because we had inexperienced people other than Ed, myself, and Sonia. The others were novice. So we were very conservative.
I don't, there were so many, I don't remember, and I was trying to think of that myself from time to time. I would guess we ran about half of them. And then, some we would line to, get past a drop.
And then,
Yeah, but I don't know.
say 50%. I think that's
Yeah.
fairly accurate.
Yeah, I think
there
in
were-
lower water, you could probably run 80%.
Yeah.
Because like you said, there was little drops, like ledges. You could
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
line, I don't know, 5 meters.
Yeah.
And then you got class 2,
And that's what we did. Yeah.
And we
had
had a
spray
group
spurts.
that passed us that had decks on their boats. That was a
Yeah.
big advantage. Because you can go
Yeah, we
through a
would've done
ledge of a meter, the water's on and off.
Yeah.
For us, we'd go scoop. Right?
Yeah.
But
And that
like I
would've made a big
said, last week when we had our preliminary, I did it at about 20 meters cubed per second, and you did it at 120 or something.
Yeah. 123. Yeah.
Huge difference. And usually it's in the 20s, 30s, something like that,
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
would say that's your bottom end, because when we started the river at the top, it was a trickle at,
Yeah.
20 or something.
Thanks. The other question I had was, are you able or willing to share your slide deck? It was very good.
Sure.
course, of
Yep.
course,
Of course. Yep.
Thank you.
So the best thing,
Maybe,
John, is
Gary, you
just
could
drop your
facilitate that?
email. Yeah, drop your email in the chat, and then I'll, you can just grab it and send it off, I guess, depending on how big the
Sure.
slide deck is, but
Drop our email in the chat.
Yeah.
well,
I'll
either
do that.
or.
Thank
John
you.
could, or you can, whatever. And then, yeah, and remember, this is gonna be on YouTube in about a week, so you can always go slowly through the presentation on YouTube. Okay, the next questions. Let's see, I'm just gonna go through here. You wanted to share? Yeah. I would, okay, Will Wolf, I would add to that, if you had spray decks, how much would you run? Okay, so the question is, if you had a spray deck, how much would you run? But I think your
Lot more.
decision was novice versus, experience.
We would have run a lot more. Again, if let's say that I think the Sydney slide said 75, so say 30, so let's say we did 35, we would have done 45 or more.
Yeah.
There were so many, like it was just awesome. Great big black tongues, but the waves were like 6-8 feet high. It would have made a huge difference. But there were some, so long answer for a short question, but the other thing is, but there were some mean holes. We got side surfed bad, and we got out of it and we got side surfed, then we swam. So anyways,
Yeah. That was not fun.
not loaded full of gear, it was.
But it's a lot of pool and drop, right? So
Yes.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
not killer
Yeah.
swims, and the water was deep, so you weren't gonna get
yeah,
banged
banged
up
up.
either.
Yeah, it's probably, like you said, 6 feet deeper than I did it.
Yeah.
When I did, it was more boom, 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 grinding the first day or two for sure. Hitting things underwater.
Well, one buddy that briefed us, he said, he was talking in the context of lower water levels. He said, you won't die, but you could pin a boat.
Yeah.
That's how we described the rapids.
Yeah.
But we always bring pin kits anyway.
Yeah,
and,
yeah, which
that's-
is-
yeah.
yeah.
Not that you want them, but
Well, that's a good idea for sure. Okay, we got a couple more messages here. Let me scroll down. Okay, great presentation. Can you speak to the extent that the portages were impacted by the fires?
so let me just think about that. I would say, of course, it occurred, the portages occurred on the longer portages. So there was, a 441, it was definitely impacted. I can't remember how many, but
There
a
was,
few.
the biggest issue was there was blowdown.
Yeah.
And of course, the trail was obliterated by the burn.
Yeah.
Thanks to David's crew, clearing or flag taping, you could get through some of it. So, but it was in my mind, it was in the category of annoyance. Because the portages were short.
Yeah.
Only one that I recall actually left the river. That might have been Fishhook.
Yeah, the big one, just, yeah.
You know, so it wasn't awful.
Yeah, I remember 2 being long and in the burn, and then after that,
Yeah, they're all
they're all
short
short.
portages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Hap Wilson's book.
Yeah.
And when you actually look at the, book, you can see it's great detail, right?
Yeah.
And you can go through every rapid, and it's like, 50 meters, 100 meters. Those are like 1 minute portages, really, right?
But yeah, sorry, I must say that you still have to scout. Because we did one that he would have said it was a 4 or 5, it was a 2.
Okay.
But we
Vice versa.
came around a corner and we were gonna stop scouting. That was like supposed to be a 2, and it was awful. It would have been a 5,
Yeah.
and you would have been
but
spent.
again, water level.
Yeah, but again, just,
Yeah, just the volume. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I do remember that the pictures and the graphics in the book were very helpful.
yeah.
When I looked at that, yeah, that's exactly what the run is, exactly how he details it.
Yeah,
And sometimes he detailed low water, high water routes. So he's done it multiple times.
Yeah. No, his stuff, I mean, his stuff's good.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if you know this, but Hap Wilson was doing our wine and cheese last fall. So we have this
nice.
wine and cheese kind of memorial presentation where we have wine and cheese and somebody talks, and he did the November one last year. So yeah, we're all big fans of him.
yes, for sure.
As you should be. Yeah.
His YouTube is, if you go back through the WCA channel about 6 months, you'll find it.
Okay.
Okay, good to know.
I see there's one more question about how much of a factor are the westerly winds. We had, there was one day where there was a westerly wind. There's no 2 ways about it. So I would say we had 2 days of headwinds that were really strong and annoying. But after that, we didn't have anything significant.
Looks like your weather was excellent too.
It
was
was wonderful. Other than the beginning, we thought, oh no, but it was lovely.
Yeah.
So just to let people know, you mentioned Knox Lake, that first 100 kilometers through the lake country where the Bloodvein officially starts, but basically you're like lake hopping. That's about 100K. And when you're the heaviest, that's where all the big portage is, 1.5K and 1K and 750, etc. But it's about 5 days from Knox Lake to Artery Lake. You do cut down on the whole flight thing because you can just get a little shuttle from Red Lake, 45 minutes to Knox Lake. And I've heard of people start in Red Lake itself. It's about 2 days to get to Knox Lake. But it's big lake travel. So you're adding another either 5 or 7 days on your trip. And then you got this massive, shuttle of your vehicles from Red Lake down to the highway, across and back up to the Bloodvein. It's it's epic. So we found an outfitter in I think Winnipeg. So the Goldfinger guy did the shuttle in Red Lake area to Knox Lake. And then we found a guy in Winnipeg to pick us up. And how do we do this? Somehow our vehicles ended up back in Winnipeg somehow. I can't remember the detail. I wasn't the organizer, but I was just going along. But yeah, there's a couple other options to look at. But your option was good because the flight, that wasn't a big shuttle, right?
Painless.
Yeah, I was looking, I think the flight, like 2 flights on the Otter, I think was about 3,500.
Okay.
And
6 ways.
And that's divided by 8 people?
2, 4, 6 people.
Six
Divided by
people?
two.
Okay, and how
Yeah.
much did the shuttle, the driving shuttle cost?
That was
It was all included.
Yeah,
That
fine,
included the
okay.
shuttle. Yeah, yeah,
so it was-
yeah. It was pretty, we thought pretty reasonable. I mean, the different flights we paid for up in the territories
Yeah.
were a lot more money.
So what do you think the total of the trip was? Like as far as when you got to the put in area, or the Bissell
You mean total cost wise, you mean?
total cost, not the cost to get there by driving, but the cost just, with the airplane and the shuttle
So airplane and shuttle was 3,500
Between, for all of
for all
us.
of us.
for all of
Like
us.
it was-
Okay, that's
it
a
was
pretty
good.
good
It was
price
good deal.
divided by
Yeah,
6.
really good.
So
Yeah,
about
no,
$600-700. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, no, it was really good.
Okay, yeah. I mean, yeah, if you can get trips at $300-400, that's as simple as you're gonna get it, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
that
exactly.
600, it's a, like you said, it's a heritage river. It's,
Yeah.
it's one of those things we're gonna tick off the list, kind of thing.
Yeah, it was good river.
All right. Is there anybody else that has any more questions? I've been kind of,
Donna's and Jeff both had their hands up.
oh, okay, go ahead, one of them,
No.
whoever.
Oh, sorry.
I've got I've done the river 6 times. I think I did it once about 35 years ago before it was heritage river status.
Yeah.
And so the one thing I would say, there was a comment about scrub oak. And there's another river south of the Bloodvein that's done quite a bit called the Manitoba River. And there is scrub oak there, and I've watched bears eating the acorns on the tree from a very close perspective too, because I was standing on an island and they were just on the other side of a chute, and it was a fairly safe place to watch bears eating acorns from about 10 feet, well, maybe 15 feet away.
Wow.
And probably what happens is the bears, they range, and they probably range and they poop out the acorns and they grow elsewhere. That's possibly one way, but scrub oak is quite common along the eastern side of Lake Winnipeg.
And is it still is it still a hardwood?
Yeah. But
That's really
it's called scrub oak. It's called. What time of year did you go? Was it June?
July.
June.
End of July.
Oh, the end of July. Okay, so you missed tick season. We have a lot of ticks coming up. Like we're in the middle of tick season now, and the ticks they're pretty bad, on the Manitoba. And I did that 3 weeks ago with Brian Johnson on a course, and there were a lot of ticks out there. So I was just curious about what time of year, because the end of July, you'd probably be getting sunset about 9 p.m. or so, I
Yep.
think.
Yeah, we didn't get any
And-
ticks. We were looking for them, but no.
Yeah. And last year was the highest water levels. Like we had a huge rock dam that's on the Manitoba, and it got washed out. And people guiding down that river had a lot of issues. So it was interesting to see your presentation. Thank you. It was very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Oh, and the other thing, it's Bissett. And I think that person who had done the trip with Hap Wilson said Bissett.
Yeah.
And Attakaki is the way that's pronounced.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Okay, thanks.
All right. So Cindy, you're off in Manitoba. Are you a member or just through the grapevine?
Oh, you mean Donna?
Donna, sorry, not Cindy. Donna.
Yeah. I was a member way back about 25 years ago, and something came up. My membership lapsed, and I was busy. I had to care for Mom for the last 10 to 15 years, so I sort of dropped off the map a bit. But I just rejoined.
Right.
Brian on the course says, "Hey, I noticed that you aren't part of WCA anymore." So he
Excellent.
he preempted me to rejoin. And
Yeah.
now that I don't have to stick around and do caregiving, I want to travel, and hopefully I can get onto some trips with some other people
Yeah,
and do
that-
some
that
more
is one of
northern
the
trips.
beauties. I've been on trips. I did the Pigeon, and we had a guy from Edmonton. Was
Oh,
it
yeah.
Winnipeg? Sorry, Winnipeg. Join us. So people are all over the place, and it's good to have a local, because we ended up that trip and we stayed at his house. Was excellent. you know,
Yeah,
before we took. a
yeah,
train
I've done the
home for 2
pigeon.
days.
I've done the pigeon 3 times. I've done the Yukon, but my plan is to go do the Nahani, and I was gonna do the seal. I stuck around because my dad died, you know,
Okay,
so
so the
I
Nahani,
do,
we just did it last year. There's a YouTube video on it.
yeah. I know, I was gonna go with Blackfeather because I don't know anybody else to go with right now, but you know, maybe I can hook up with people for some of the other trips.
Yeah,
Would be great.
excellent. All right.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else in the crowd that wants to ask a question or make a comment? All right. Well, it looks like that's it. Thanks very much, Cindy. And
Thank you.
And it was excellent. And we had quite a good crowd here, so it was a good turnout. And like I mentioned to everybody, when you do these, write-ups and the video thing and the YouTube thing, I mean, it really makes a full body because you can ask questions and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And even after the fact, we get questions on the YouTube videos, and Matt and I, we kind of monitor that and we try to answer it, or we send the question on to you guys or whoever. And that's really helpful. Members love it, and people outside the club see that and they see the benefit of the club. The whole networking is excellent. All right, Jean-Claude, excellent presentation. Great. So I guess we'll wrap it up and look for us in about a week on YouTube.
Wonderful. Well, it was a pleasure
right.
to do. We
Yeah,
enjoyed it.
have a
Thank you.
good summer, everybody.
All right, so
Bye.
long.
Bye.
Thanks for
Thank
doing
you.
it.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.